hit me up about doing this, as you mentioned. My first thought was I didn't want to talk in front of a bunch of people about myself. But the way he described it was that it was more of like a social kind of gathering for creative people to get together, talk about creative stuff, talk about their jobs, all that. And I thought that's great. So I kind of want, instead of me talking at you guys for the whole time, if you guys have questions while I'm talking, feel free to raise your hand. Totally acceptable. Question?
A little less than the mic.
Less than a mic. Wow, look at that. It's following your advice. Also, if you need a beer at any point, go get a beer. So Brett hyped me up. I just wanted to hype him up a bit here. The second speaker, or the third speaker after the month after me is Myra. I've known Myra for a long time. I actually met her next door at Shubha's, and she'll pop up in my speech, or in my talk later. So she's an awesome person, and I highly recommend coming out for her. And then Ryan Dugan is an amazing artist, whose stuff is all over my walls, also great. So again, come on for his stuff. So turning points. I've got 3 main ones and a bunch of minor ones. Becoming a photographer, becoming a photographer that gets paid, and becoming a happy photographer, question mark. So, quick backstory about myself. I'm glad you guys got that, but I photo so much. Quick backstory. In high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I did a bunch of creative stuff, didn't really care for school too much, but was on a path to go to Northern Illinois University with an undeclared major. I had no idea what I wanted to do. My dad took me aside and was like, first turning point, you know, you do all this video stuff all the time. Why are you going to Northern? There's nothing there that you want to do. Why don't you go to Columbia College? I didn't know you could go to school for creative stuff. I was, you know, a weird kid who didn't really have a plan for his future at the time. But it was great advice. I ended up going to Columbia College, majoring in film production. And, you know, while I was in college, got a still camera because it was easier to do stuff by myself. I was, you know, a quiet, shy kid. Making films is harder. You need like a crew, you need a bunch of people, you need a sound guy who already yelled at me. So I, you know, bought a camera and just wandered the streets of Chicago, shooting photos, teaching myself, learning. This photo here was like the first time I ever shot photos with a flash. I was at a social gathering. I was in a kickball league back in my post-college years, and a buddy of mine let me borrow his strobe, which I popped on my camera. I found a napkin at the bar and taped it on there for some diffusion, just being resourceful. And just like drunkenly wandered around taking photos of people. And the next day I was kind of shocked by the cool stuff I got. So I took this as an idea to go out, and on June 15th, 2006, so I went back and like dug up all my old photos for this talk. I kind of wanted to like show some progression over the first few years of me shooting at night in clubs and bars and at shows. And this was the first night at Continental, the bar. I don't know if you know it, it's on Chicago Avenue. I used to live over there. And I went to their opening night and just shot a bunch of photos. And basically, this was like the first time I went out and started shooting like strangers in bars. It helped that I was drunk. It helped that it was a time when like digital photography was still kind of new and like social media wasn't what it is now. So people weren't like nervous about getting embarrassing photos of them plastered over the internet. Like, you can't really do this stuff nowadays, I feel like, but back then you could. And I didn't know it at the time, but it was amazing, because I basically like put myself through photography school. This is my setup back then. It's kind of sad and depressing, but I wanted to put this in here because it just shows like how much stuff has changed since then. So basically what I did is I went out like all the time, like probably 5 nights a week. And I kind of approached it less as like taking photos of people, for people, and more taking less of taking pictures for people, more of taking pictures of people, trying to find like the unique, weird moments, like more like street photography style. And you know, just like really trying to get like the weird moments and teaching myself along the way. And at one point, in this endeavor, I stumbled upon a website of this guy actually, which was called thecobrasnake.com. He was a guy based in LA, and he was doing what I was doing, but he was just posting his photos on like a branded website. He was really, really good at like promoting himself. He had like an aura, a mystique, all that kind of stuff. And I Googled Chicago party photographers, couldn't really find anyone doing it, so decided that I was going to be the Chicago party photographer guy. Took me a little while, but I came up with the name everyoneisfamous.com. That was my website. And I basically I just started putting all these photos that I was taking on my website. And it worked at the time because like MySpace was a thing and people wanted MySpace photos. And like you could do, like I mentioned earlier, you could shoot stuff like this and people wouldn't care because they didn't think like their employer was gonna see it the next day. And it turned into like this thing that like the hipsters of Chicago, like Brett mentioned, kind of like flocked to because you could see what was going on, what was cool in the city, what people were up to, who you wanted to like date or make fun of or all that kind of stuff. And just kind of like kept at it. I was still working a full-time job that I kind of hated. It was in film production, but it was like just like the full-time job thing. I didn't really want that. I wanted to like be more free and creative and like kind of like work on my own schedule, that kind of thing. So eventually I quit the job and just decided, like people are kind of paying me for this, not really, like $50 here and there, free drink tickets. That's probably why I picked up a drinking habit. I can do this, I can make this work. My rent was like $250 a month, it was nothing. I know, times have changed. I just lived really cheap. I was like a dirty young hipster guy, like whatever. I wanted to include this one because it was interesting going through all these old photos. This is like from 2006. You didn't see people with like cell phones. Like everyone now is looking at their phone. It was like rare that you would see people looking at cell phones back then. But everyone was smoking, so that's, I guess, a benefit of today. This was me and my setup, bar napkin taped to the strobe. Very simple, very cheap. Again, like just trying to find like weird, different moments, often embarrassing. It's like stuff like this. Like one of the cool things about like doing this was kind of getting out of my comfort zone for sure, and like being less afraid to like take a weird photo that like might be embarrassing to me and him. Like he's not gonna want to see this photo on the internet the next day, but it got me over these weird fears. I love that one. So I just kept at it. Another great takeaway from these years was learning anticipation. It's kind of like a great takeaway from my earlier like production assistant years as well, like learning to anticipate moments and like be ready for them when they happen. I've also fallen asleep in a bar, so I feel like that gives me like permission to shoot stuff like this on multiple occasions, I must say. I've also blacked out, I'll admit it, on camera. This is an update of where I'm at in these years. Another cool thing about this era was like I would travel quite a bit, and there was like every city had their own like weird nightlife party photographer or two. So it's like we could bond over that, and I like made friends with fellow weird photo nightlife bloggers. Some of whom like later in my career like ended up getting me jobs like in more legit professions like the Wall Street Journal. The first time I shot for them, it was for a guy who I met on the internet. So like right about now, this is a DJ duo called Justice. They're from Paris. They kind of blew up pretty huge in 2006. And this was my first photo that ever got published. It got published in the New York Times, which was amazing. Like, I'm just a kid, I don't even know what I'm doing, and the New York Times emails me, and they're like, we want to use this photo in the newspaper. Okay. Like, I remember getting the check from them and like taking a photo of the envelope that was addressed to me from the New York Times. So the more I did it, the more confidence I got, the better I got. Just like weird, hard environments to shoot in, like dark, sweaty,
gross clubs, and it's just challenging. So it really helps you grow as a photographer. This photo was used as an album cover. That's DJ Funk. Didn't get paid for that one. That's another story. So again, kept at it. Also, shooting music was huge back then. This is the Cool Kids. They're a really good rap duo from Chicago. Kind of was like party to a lot of like really cool up-and-coming music stuff that was happening in Chicago back then. And around this time, I guess you can kind of see like I'm starting to experiment with like lighting a bit more instead of just like boring camera on a flash, like very flat static images. I'm like playing with lighting and trying to like make weird, unique stuff in images that are otherwise less exciting. That's Nas. Got to shoot Nas. I just love all these weird kisses that were happening. Like, it's so gross. But it's amazing. Like, that's a cool photo. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. So eventually started shooting for the Chicago Reader and like more local publications like that, learning how to shoot people in difficult situations, et cetera, et cetera. So this photo kind of like represents another turning point for me. It was like I was always out there seeing moments and shooting them or trying to shoot them. You don't always capture it. But like this one, I remember seeing and trying to capture, but like failing. They saw me shooting them and stopped making out. But, I'm like, that would be a really cool photo. So I talked to them and like kind of like reset it up and like art directed it a bit and ended up getting a photo that I thought was really awesome that looked really candid and natural. So that kind of marked a turning point in my career from becoming the broke hipster photographer to becoming a photographer who gets paid. And over my years of being a commercial shooter, which I am now, people always ask for like advice. How do you do it? What do you do? And like these are the three things I think that kind of like always come back to me. It's, personal connections, exposure, and luck. So connections, it's pretty straightforward. Get out, meet people, make friends. Exposure, start a blog, start a YouTube channel, whatever it is, do it. And luck, you can help your luck by making work. The more work you make, the more people are going to see it. I didn't know it at the time, but the everyoneisfamous.com blog that I was doing sort of checked all these boxes, which was great for me because I didn't plan on this, and that's, I guess, where luck comes in. I didn't plan on doing this. And I'm not like a super outgoing people person, so I'm not like always out there networking or, schmoozing. But the website kind of did it for me, or it forced me to get out there and do it at least. So my first ever commercial assignment was a huge turning point for me because, well, for a few reasons. It paid. Like, I bought a car because of this job. It was for Bank of America, and it couldn't have been a more perfect job for me at the time in my young career. Essentially, we went around and documented like businesses and nonprofits, but it was all like editorial, candid, like documentary style, very loose, which is exactly what I liked doing. The other thing that was crazy about it, where luck comes in, I guess I kind of glossed over I shoot food and drink a lot as well. And I got into shooting that stuff because I would shoot at the Empty Bottle all the time, shows. And one of the owners of the Empty Bottle, he's like, I'm opening a restaurant. I need you to come take photos of the food. And I'm like, I don't know how to shoot food. I can't do that. And he's like, yeah, it'll be fine. Just come and do it. And I did it. And the restaurant turned out to be Longman and Eagle, which was like hugely successful. Everyone saw these photos. Everyone was hitting me up. Can I use these photos? And it was like I kind of got out of my comfort zone and did it, and the photos turned out all right. So like looking back on them, they're not great photos, but it started me down a path of shooting food stuff. Another thing that happened from that is one of the other owners of Longman and Eagle is a guy by the name of Cody Hudson, who's a great local artist. And he got an email one day from an amazing art director out of Boston saying, hey, Cody, I got a job in Chicago. Do you know any photographers in Chicago? Cody put my name on the list. She saw my work. She really liked it. And it's rare, but like she took a chance on me. I was just this guy who didn't have a commercial job under my belt ever, but she's like, this guy knows what he's doing, let's hire him, which is cool. And like I feel like not super common in this business. But all these like things came together for a perfect storm. And I got my first commercial job out of it. It which was great. We shot, in Chicago, Detroit, and Houston. And shortly after this job, I, was thinking in my head, what's the next step? Like, I should probably get a commercial rep because that's what photographers do. I'm not great at like going out and making connections and knowing art agents, like agency people. That's kind of the rep's job. They have all those connections and like are way better at it than I can ever be. So I figured I would like put together a portfolio, do some personal work, and start pursuing a rep. But my buddy Dave, he mentioned that he was going to an APA event, like a local photography organization was like holding like photographers meet reps, you show them your work, maybe something happens basically. I was like very underprepared. I felt nervous about it. I didn't have like a book. Everyone had like printed books. I walked in with my laptop, sat down in front of 3 reps. 2 of them kind of could care less about me. One of them, who's in this room, was like, you know what you're doing. And we talked, and she ended up signing me to her roster, which was amazing and unexpected. And this is one of the first jobs I shot through the rep. And you can tell, like, there's obvious influences from my party photography. Like, this was for Doritos, actually. We shot it in New York. It was, and I put this in here because, a quick tangent, like, one of my beefs with, if you guys will allow me, with commercial jobs is they can be very challenging. And the main reason they're challenging is because you get, like, this creative vision, and sometimes the vision is just, like, either too generic or impossible. It's, like, literally guy on roof in New York sitting on couch with a cool boombox listening to music. Like, there's almost no way to make this a good photo, especially when you're like challenged with time and you have like a day to shoot like 20 images or 20 different setups. But I don't know. I mean, I still think it's a nice photo, but it could be better. But my point is, it was cool, like, going out and doing kind of what I did in real life in like a commercial setting for the first time. For a company that paid me. So this is another great example of, Myra, who's speaking here next month, hooked me up with this job. This was for Choose Chicago. And it was a really cool job because it wasn't like we have a day to shoot a ton of stuff. It was like we have like over the whole summer and we just go out and shoot a bunch of really cool stuff, but there's time and there's like, you can make better stuff when you have more time. Like if it's rainy this day, you don't have to still shoot. You can, shoot the next day. You might make a little less money per hour, but I feel like the results end up better because you have the flexibility. Like this one was shot at Riot Fest. I was just walking around, just kind of documenting people. If they wanted to be in the photo, I just had them sign a release. Simple as that. And then this job was for Pacifico. We shot it out in Malibu. And it was another example, to circle back to Cody Hudson and the Land and Sea Department connection. I still kind of shoot, to this day, I still shoot a lot of stuff for Land and Sea. And it's cool because I kind of see it almost as like a personal job. It's like I'm shooting for them, but I'm not making a ton of money doing it because they're like restaurants, they don't have a ton of money, but it's looser and I can be more like creative and figure stuff out and experiment. But the cool thing is their restaurants get a lot of like hype and attention. Question?
Seeing this photo and other photos, how are they generally used when they're paid commercial work? How was this one? How was this one?
Thank you for the opportunity to have a sip of beer, by the way. So the question, to repeat for the audio, was how are these photos generally used for commercial work? It's a good question, and I honestly don't have a great answer because it varies like drastically. This one specifically was used for like print stuff in like liquor stores and bars. Well, this one's probably better representative of, like, I feel like maybe this shot they needed for like online or something. Like a lot of the stuff ends up online in like various forms, whether it's social media or ads or what have you. But it can vary. Like sometimes it's billboards, sometimes it's print ads in magazines, sometimes it's point of sale stuff. So does that answer your question, kind of? All right. Thanks for the question, by the way. And so this job I ended up getting because I was shooting all this stuff for Parsons. An agency person named Laura, who was supposed to be here tonight but couldn't make it, ended up seeing all my stuff for Parsons and put me in. She's like, this guy's awesome. He would be great for this job. We should hire him. And I got the job and shot the stuff, and it was a really fun job. This mansion was like insane. That's the ocean out there. So yeah, that's kind of a brief overview of the commercial portion of my career. Yes, question. Yeah, that's a great question. How did I transfer from being the dirty hipster who doesn't know what he's doing to the commercial guy who's like confident with a big crew and a lot of people and a lot of money at stake? That's a great question. Honestly, it just took like years of doing it. And like one of the things that I think really helped as well that I haven't really touched on was my years in production, film production. Like I PA'd for a lot of years. I worked at a production company. I was on sets a lot. Like I understood what was happening. I knew everyone's role. That like hugely boosted my confidence because I think if I jumped into that first commercial job for Bank of America without having any of that experience, I would have been like way more freaked out than I was. So that was like crucial, I think personally. Yes.
And how did you go from, how did you handle going from doing everything solo to having a crew?
How did I go from doing everything solo to having a crew? It makes me laugh. That's a funny question. All right, so like, it's weird because I still have way too much of the solo, I can do everything mentality in me, to the point where I'll be on a big commercial job and like the assistants are used to like swooping in and doing everything, but I'll just change the lens and like everyone's freaking out like, why is this guy changing the lens? But I'm like, why would I not change the lens? This is what you do. So it's weird. Part of it is like I honestly feel like I need to get better in that, like because that's what your crew is there for. They're there to like help you do all these other jobs because you have a ton of stuff to do in one day and it's a challenge and like the client is spending a lot of money, so there's a lot of money at stake and everyone wants the photos to be amazing. So I think it's just I constantly have to remind myself of that. But also I feel like having that like film production background as well helped, I think. Because like you know that there's all these departments and they're there for a reason. So I don't know. Does that answer it kind of? Yes. I like this.
So a really practical question a lot of people ask, and it's always hard to answer, is when you go through these turning points and go from like just shooting something for passion in a club to like, oh no, I'm being paid, is like, what are you going to ask for? How much do you ask for? How do you judge what your time is worth? And without getting to numbers, but like, how do you go through that process of deciding what to ask for?
How do you find like what your value is, what the proper rate, like money is always impossible for like, especially creative people to talk about. A huge benefit to having a rep is that's kind of their job because like they're getting a cut of that, so the more they get, the more they make. But so like, well, here's like a weird, funny story that I was gonna tell but didn't, but now I can. When I was the broke hipster photographer, I got an email from Sparks. I don't know if you guys remember Sparks. It was, I drank way too much of that stuff. So when they emailed me, I was like ecstatic. Like Sparks wanted me to shoot portraits for them for ads. And like, to me, getting that email, it was like a dream come true. Like this was before I had done any like legit job. And I had this problem. I basically scared them away because I was an idiot who didn't know what he was doing and way undersold myself. And I don't remember what the number was, but I'm like, I just really want to do this. Like, I'll just do it. I didn't say that, but I gave him like a really low figure to the point where someone sees that. They're like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. We're not going to like waste our time on him. Like, I don't even think they responded to the email. But yeah, so like, to better answer your question, it's hard. It takes time. Like the more you do it, the less like weird it gets. I feel like having a rep obviously helps. There's tons of websites nowadays that like will like help you go through that stuff as well. So that's always good. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, no, yeah. Does that answer your question? I feel like I'm not even answering these questions. We can get more into that after this, I guess. I think, yeah, that's kind of an unanswerable question. Like, all of us in this room probably still struggle with that.
The BS answer is you're as worthless as much as you got paid last time.
Yeah, well, yes and no. Talk to Erica. It's tricky. It really is. So this last turning point is kind of, I feel like, a little... It's kind of the turning point that I'm going through now. And I feel like the whole industry is changing quite a lot. And I've gotten to a point in my career where, so for years I said yes to every single job. Like anyone wanted photos, I'll do it if I'm free. Because I was like still learning, still enthusiastic about learning, still like everything was new to me. I remember like back then my older photographer friends would think that I was crazy and like yell at me because I'm like underselling the industry and like lowering rates for everyone. And these are valid concerns. Like, you know, we want to make proper compensation for what we're doing. But back then I was just like, yeah, I'll do it. You need photos? Let's do it. And then I learned to say no, and I've gotten a lot better at it. These days I definitely don't shoot probably most things that I get hit up to shoot, just because, like, I don't know, people have crazy asks these days. But anyway, I saw this tweet this morning, and it really hit home. This is another buddy of mine from New York who did a nightlife photo blog, and these days kind of also does that, but shoots a lot of other stuff I won't get into. But the concept behind his website, Driven by Boredom, was that he hated being bored, so he had to go out and make stuff. I'm a little too comfortable with boredom at this point in my life, and I don't like it. And I responded, same, been shooting way less lately, and it set off a mini existential crisis, which is kind of like what I'm struggling with lately. Like, I don't have to shoot every day to make enough money to pay my rent or my mortgage now. So it's kind of been like great in some ways. Like, I have free time, I have new hobbies, I have a long-term girlfriend for the first time in my life. Because I'm not spending every day of my life like working. Like, I was such a workaholic back then. I was so driven just to like constantly be shooting and getting better. And I guess the long and the short of it is like that was great for me, but it sucks that like you kind of, I don't know, I feel like you almost have to go through that like crazy period of your life, unless you're like just naturally the best at it, to get like as good as I am now. One of the best things I feel like you can do as a photographer or as an artist is personal work. That's kind of an obvious thing. It's also something that I could be better at. Like, I have endless ideas on personal projects, and most of them I don't ever do. But one of my favorite things to do is to travel, and when you're traveling, you take photos. At least I do. Although nowadays, with Instagram and iPhones, like, everyone is constantly taking photos, and I'm just as guilty of that. Like, it's another struggle I have, and here I am talking about struggles, and that's kind of like, I wanted this last turning point to be a little open-ended and like kind of pose questions to you guys, and maybe we all have a beer after this and talk about it. Maybe there's a therapist in the room that wants to. Because like, I find myself leaving my SLR at home. It's big, it's bulky, it's a pain in the ass to carry around everywhere. Sometimes you just want the phone and the camera, and like it's really easy and quick. The photos aren't nearly as good though. So it's, and then you post everything to Instagram, and it's like what everyone does now. Like, everyone was famous back in the day, now everyone's a photographer, which is cool if you like photography. Like literally, probably everyone in this room has Instagram, or at least has had it once. Seriously, raise your hand if you've never posted it on Instagram. Okay, the whole room. So, and that's great if you're into photography, but it's sort of like, in my mind, I feel like I'm struggling because it's like, now that everyone's doing it, maybe it's not as like unique and I'm not as like special as I used to be. I don't know. But I still really enjoy it, so you can't complain that much, I guess. So personal work, this is a photo that I still love. I have no idea who this guy is, but I want to track him down. If you're a rat, stay out of the game. But like, why? And his hat says, stay out the game. His hat says, I demand a recount. The what? Dang it, I missed the stoop sale. I'm wondering, this was in New York. I was hoping it would have the year, but it doesn't. That was probably like 2006, or maybe 7, I don't know. But anyway, so photography started as like a cool, weird, new passion for me, and it eventually morphed into a job, which is great and not so great. It's insane the amount of time I spend doing stuff that's not taking photos as a photographer. It's like probably like I spend like 10% of my time that I'm working taking photos, maybe a little more, but it's crazy. Like it's just emails and calls and like writing treatments and doing other stuff, taxes, whatever. But here's a brief list of the jobs that I also could find myself getting thrilled about that I wanted to write down because, I don't know, here, arborist, architect, coffee shop owner, film director, karaoke J, mayor, would settle for alderman, restaurant, bar owner, real estate developer, roller coaster designer, stock trader, travel influencer, urban planner, video game YouTuber, and writer. So I don't know if you guys are this like weird or if it's just me or what, but I constantly find myself like wanting to like try, like I'll go full in on something, whether it's, you know, back when I was younger, web design or video shooting and editing or photography. And it just so happened the photography one turned into the job, and now I'm like, well, maybe it's time to move on to the next thing. But to defend photography, I will say that it's like probably one of the perfect professions for someone like me who's like always thinking about what else I could be doing with my life. Because I get to like get like little tastes of what other people's jobs and lives are. I can like, I'll probably never be a roller coaster designer, but I did get to photograph the roller coaster mechanic at Six Flags on top of a roller coaster, and that's pretty amazing. Like photography lets you into these situations that you probably wouldn't get to do if you had a more like normal job. But anyway, these are some more of my travel personal photos. And I really find myself, anytime like I'm kind of in a funk about photography or my life or my profession, like just getting out of the house and like wandering around and taking photos of stuff really tends to make me feel better. And I think it's just like creating, like I have a constant like urge to just create, like even if no one ever sees it, because like back then I was posting everything onto a website and everyone saw everything. Now I just take photos and most of the times I don't even put them anywhere. And I wonder like, why am I doing this? Like, not even my girlfriend sees them all. But anyway, we can talk about this more over beers later. I don't want this to turn into like a vacation slideshow, which it kind of is now. But anyway, I'm almost done. These are beautiful, Zion. And again, like, just like, this is something that I never would have done. Like, I saw these two just sitting on a pier in or it wasn't Santa Monica, it was California somewhere. And like, just the fact that I was out always shooting all the time really gave me the confidence just to be like, hey, can I take your photo? And these people said no, but because like, I've done this so much, I like got them to say yes, and then I got this cool photo out of it. And that's it. Thank you guys very much for listening. If there are any more cues, now's the time.
Yeah. So thank you so much. If there's any questions, does anybody have any questions? Oh, all right. Here we go. This is for the video.
I was an art director, and I looked at a lot, I don't even know if it's on, but I looked at a lot of portfolios for 20 years. And I'm just giving my objective view. One thing is that photography started to get a lot tougher for a lot of photographers because you could get stock photography. But what's incredible about your work is like all of it to me does not look like stock. All of it looks like surprising, fresh. It's just not like stock. I think that's why you get the work. and whatever where you came from, the roughness that's in your work, and the surprising, like the sand dunes were there, but there was a little funky bush in the sand somewhere. Like there was a dobble over there, So that's what you got. That's where you stand out that way, and it puts people in a place in a very remarkable captured image, and so I really enjoyed watching it.
That's not a question.
Thank you.
Thankfully, people don't know about the Photoshop filter that I just hit. That does that.
Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was awesome.